few other things to take into account are the white balance on your camera. So that affects if you go outside during noon, you'll realize that the color of white or white light looks different than it does in the evening. Or let's say you have incandescent light bulbs inside a house that will look a little more yellow than they would outside. So there's a spectrum of light that goes kind of from a yellow to a bluish color. And so what your white balance setting does is it tells your camera what color is actually white. So often you can just set it to auto, or if you want to cheat and make you want your footage to look a little yellower, you could set it to cloudy, which will kind of compensate and make everything look a little bit more yellow. So there's different ways to be aware of that, but you can just set your white balance. The big thing where you will get in trouble is if you're inside and you're using fluorescent lights and it's set to too yellow. Sometimes you have to do an automatic adjustment, which you can do by getting a white piece of paper and pointing it at your camera to calibrate things. If you're using like fluorescent lights, they're a little bit odd looking. I'd recommend doing that. The other thing to think about have to do with different types of filters. So whether it's a polarizing filter, which is really useful for light, or an ND filter or a variable ND filter, which is basically like sunglasses. So if I take a variable ND filter and turn it like on this camera, you'll see that things get darker because it's a gradual adjustment. So this is helpful to have some sort of ND filter on your camera when you're outside, there's a lot of light, and you want to be able to open up your aperture to let in a lot of light to make things blurry, but also if you want to be able to lower your shutter so that there's a bit of healthy motion blur. If you want to be able to do those two things, you're going to need some sort of additional ND filter to help block out some of the light. So I like to look at it as, if you go outside on a bright day, no matter how much you squint on a bright sunny day, it's still going to be bright, and you really almost need some sort of sunglasses to really help cut down on the glare. And so your camera is the same way. If you're outside and it's bright, it's worth looking into some sort of ND filter that will help cut down the light and it'll just make things look a little bit better overall. But getting an additional ND filter does take as an additional accessory that I'd put down the line of priority, but it's worth looking into at some point. So all these factors, it's going to take time. I encourage you to just play around with your camera, get used to it. As a goal, you want to be out on a shoot and know exactly what to do, what to turn where. The last thing you want to do is be in front of a shot that you just have to capture and you turn your aperture the wrong way to make it brighter or darker. So that's why practice is what it takes to get better at all of these adjustments. Get to know your camera before you take it out on a big shoot.